Ms. Rupa Pai, to introduce the one and only Mr. Ruskin Bond to us.
Thank you all. Thank you. This is too comfortable. I won't be able to get up again now.
And you missed your siesta today, right?
I did, yes. And just as we arrived here, I started feeling drowsy. But now that I see you all, I'm wide awake. Thank you.
Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. The task I've been entrusted with today is one that gives me great and unimagined pleasure. Great pleasure because, of course, who would not be completely and totally delighted to have the opportunity to meet a childhood and long-time idol. And unimagined pleasure because when I first fell in love with the words of this man, when I was about 16 or 17, I never imagined that there would come a day when I'd be sitting across him like this and would have the license to ask him anything I liked for the next 45 minutes, with the caveat that he would have to actually answer those questions. So, great and unimagined pleasure.
I'll do my best.
And I wanted to say that, I just want to tell you a little bit about what I first read of Mr. Bond's work. I must have been 16 or something, and it was the fag end of a very long and hot summer. And I had finished reading everything that the local library had to offer. I had read everything I owned about 3 times over. And I had been reduced to reading the labels on the jars of pickles and toothpaste cartons at home because there was nothing else to read. And I was desperately looking for a book, any book. And one of my friends who happened to be an ICSE student, I was a state board student, so she said, I can lend you my English textbook if you like. And I was delighted because, for a state board student, an ICSE student's English textbook means like good stuff to read, right? And she happened to pass me her non-detailed textbook, which was a novel, and it was called The Room on the Roof. And maybe because I was the same age as the protagonist, Rusty, in the book. How many of you have read Room on the Roof? Yeah, okay.
2.
No, not
No
2,
more.
come on, there are like at least 25 people. Okay, so maybe because I was the same age as the protagonist, that the novel, it was about it's a growing up novel of Rusty's transition from Rusty the boy to Rusty the man. And it resonated very deeply with me. And something of the love and loss in that book has stayed with me to this day. And I remember reaching the last page of the book and saying, no, it can't be over, and going back to the first page and starting all over again. This time savoring it because I knew how it was going to end. So not wanting to get to the part where your heart breaks, so, slowly. Anyway, so this is not about me, obviously, this is about him. So let's get to that part. And I'm going to say something really cheesy. I thought about it a lot, debated whether this forum was, perhaps too august for that kind of line. But then Anurag assured me that it's very informal. So I said, okay, then I can probably say this and get away with it. So I crave your indulgence. I'm going to indulge a very childish whim. Ladies, gentlemen, students, teachers, may I present to you Bond, Ruskin Bond. Okay, so now's the hard part. How do you introduce somebody who needs no introduction, right? It's a tough one, but someone has to do it. So in complete contrast to Mr. Bond's style of writing, which I can only describe as elegant, unhurried, gentle, I'm going to sort of rush through his list of achievements because there are too many to chronicle slowly. He'll never get a chance to hear him speak otherwise. And I want you to all give him a round of applause whenever I pause. Okay, so I'm just going through it now. 60 years of writing. Over 500 published short stories, articles, essays, novellas, songs, poems, travel writings. Over 30 books for children alone. A lifetime of awards and accolades. The Room on the Roof, which he wrote, incidentally, when he was only 17, won the John Llewellyn Rice Memorial Prize for the best work of fiction by an author from anywhere in the Commonwealth under the age of 35 in 1957.
That's right.
In 1993, he received the Sahitya Academy Award for English writing. in 1999, he was awarded the Padma Shri for his contribution to children's literature. Thereby, you know, as a children's writer myself, I am most grateful to him for that one thing, for raising the profile of writing for children in this country. If there's one children's author who is known by most children across the country, it is Ruskin Bond. Who else do you know? Children's authors, Indian? I don't know. Some. Maybe there are some, but I can't recall. Okay, but Ruskin Bond, everybody knows. Yeah. 3 of his stories have been made into movies. A Flight of Pigeons became Junoon, directed by Shyam Benegal. Applause.
They're getting tired.
The Blue Umbrella became Vishal Bharadwaj's national award-winning children's film. And Susanna's 7 husbands became the same director's Saat Khoon Maaf. Okay. There are several compelling reasons for anyone, for any organizer of events to invite Ruskin Bond as the chief guest. Because, you know, least of which, I mean, not least of which is the fact that he will draw a capacity crowd. You're assured of a capacity crowd if you invite Ruskin Bond. But I think he's particularly apt as a chief guest or as a speaker at this event because in his writing, Mr. Bond, just like the Wipro Earthian Awards, brings together 2 of the most important things in the world, children and nature. His love for both shines through in much of his work, and although he says that he doesn't have something of a philosophy, of a personal philosophy to share, in one of his books he says, I don't really have a personal philosophy, but I think his personal philosophy is basically live gently and gently let live. And you know, it's best encapsulated in the title of one of his essays in one of his books, which says, with his trademark sense of gentle humor that's the undercurrent running through most of his work, a bush at hand is good for many a bird. And now, without further ado, Ruskin Bond.
Well, thank you, Rupa. You left me speechless after all that.
Now
I must tell you that Rupa Pai writes very good stories too and books, and I was going through one of them last night, and I kept I'm thinking I must be out of date. She's using words I've never come across before. And then I realized she's inventing words, inventing new words, which in a way were very appropriate and humorous. And I think if they're not in the dictionary now, they will be one day.
Oh, thank you. So welcome to Bangalore, Mr. Bond. So tell us about your relationship with the city. How often have you been here?
Gosh, well, I first saw Bangalore in 1960. That's when your grandfathers were around, I think, younger ones. And it was really just a big town then. It wasn't a city as it is today. You had a lot of bungalows with gardens, and I remember walking around everywhere. There was a tank, a sort of pond called the Sampingi tank, where the kids used to bathe their buffaloes, and there used to be even bullfights there. I don't think you have bullfights anymore in Bangalore. No. But anyway, it was a very charming place with flowering trees. And I see there's still so many trees around. And I think compared to most other cities in India, I think Bangalore is still one of the better preserved from the point of view of gardens and parks and greenery. So I think you're very fortunate to be living here. And so many people do want to come and stay in Bangalore.
Yes, that's the issue. Yeah. And actually, you were mentioning Sampangi Tank. Does anyone in this audience know where Sampangi Tank is now?
No, it's disappeared. I believe it's vanished. It's gone.
It is now the Kantirava Stadium. Yeah. So that's why you drive down into Kantirava Stadium, because it's a tank bed. It used to be the Sampangi Tank.
No wonder you have a water shortage.
Yeah. Yeah, you said that. So now I just want to read a little passage first. You know, I'm going to keep doing this because I think his language is so beautiful. I would be spoiling it by saying it in my words. So I'm just going to read something and then ask a question based on that. This is a little poem called Return to Dera. So this is old Dera of mangoes and lemons, where I grew beside the jackfruit tree, planted by my father on the sunny side of the house, since sold to Major General Mehra. The town's grown hard. None know me now or knew my mother's laughter. Most men come home as strangers, and yet the trees my father planted here, these trees, old family trees, are growing still in Dera. So you write very poignantly, evocatively, and very often about trees and your father somehow together with each other. You write about trees a lot, but usually your father is a part of that. And I find that British kids somehow have a lot of, they know the names of the trees. If you read British books, there's a lot of reference to the landscape, to the scenery, with individual trees being named, which is somehow missing in Indian literature. Children don't know the names of trees, and maybe even their parents may not know more than to be able to identify about 8 to 10 trees. So even though our mythology is replete with references to trees, and even though we deify trees and we worship them, so what do you think parents can do? And I think it's a big part of loving trees is to know them.
That's true. I think it's important to know their names. And I think certain trees do figure in Indian literature by their name. For instance, mango trees.
Yeah.
They're associated with the spring, with love and come blossom, and again with flowering trees, jasmine, and where there's a sort of romantic association, but perhaps not so much trees for their own sake. As you say, even there are many trees and shrubs that I don't recognize, but I'm always trying to find out what they are, what their names are. And I think you have a greater empathy with trees and with nature in general if you know more about them, not just from a sentimental, nostalgic point of view, but also from a botanical or scientific point of view. They should all merge into one.
So what do you think, what do you think teachers, and there are a lot of teachers here and parents, so what?
Well, perhaps at school that's the time to, when I was a boy, we had a subject called nature study when we were very small. And so we did learn these things, and it was here in India and in this hill school. I think that's something that could be reintroduced as a subject even. Not for marks or for
exactly.
exams.
Yes, to keep it apart from the pedagogical part of it. It is said of a man that the true worth of a man is known. It can be measured. The true measure of a man can be got by seeing how he deals with subordinates, with children, and with animals. So we know that you have a great relationship with children.
Yes.
And we know that you have a great relationship with animals.
Animals, sometimes.
Yeah. And we know that
I'm troubled by monkeys. Up in Masuri, if I leave a window open, the monkey is on my bed or at the telephone, phoning long distance to relatives. One day I opened the bathroom door and there was this huge monkey sitting on the potty. And he wouldn't get up, so I had to really bang the door. You, sir, lived in Masuri, so you know what a menace they are. But otherwise, I'm fond of animals in general.
Chosen not to have subordinates, so you're a very worthy person.
No subordinates.
I just want to read out a little passage where you say, it's the simple things in life that keep us from going crazy. Like that pigeon in the skylight in the New Delhi nursing home, where I was incarcerated for 2 or 3 days. Even worse than the illness that had brought me there were the series of tests that the doctors insisted I had to go through. And at the end of it all, a nice fat bill designed to give me a heart attack. And you say, the only thing that prevented me running into the street shouting for help was that pigeon in the skylight. So would you share with us some anecdotal stuff about animals that have shared your space?
Or let's say absence of animals, because your pigeon in the skylight made me think of a trip I made to Dubai just about a month ago, and I was staying there in a very posh hotel, and I looked out of the window, and there were cars moving around, and these tall buildings everywhere, and I thought something is missing. People were missing. They were either in vehicles or they were in buildings, but you didn't see them on the roads. Then there were trees were missing. There was only one palm tree down in the yard. And when I went down to look at it, I found out that was also an artificial palm tree. So the birds were missing, and stray cows and dogs were missing, and I began feeling within 2 hours I was homesick for India. Because all the life and the hustle and the bustle and the frenzy of India was something I've lived with all my life, and suddenly it wasn't there, and I thought, this is terrible. This is real science fiction, I was in a world I just had to run away from.
Some animals that have shared your little room in Masuri.
Well, there's this chuchundar. It's a shrew, which you call, I think in Hindi, a chuchundar. It's got a long snout, and I'm not allowed to hurt it or kill it, because everyone says they're very lucky, and they're going to bring you lots of money. So I wait daily for the postman to see if there's a check in the mail. Maybe by the time I get back, there will be.
So you brought up this issue of homesick for India, and that's something that I have been very curious about since I read Room on the Roof. Because Room on the Roof is about, for those who haven't read it, is about an adolescent called Rusty, who is a sort of a semi-autobiographical figure. Because he shares a lot of his, it grew out of your diary, I believe, a diary you kept when you were 17.
Yes, when I was 17.
So while he's not completely true to life, a lot of his, he's close to Mr. Bond himself. And I've always wondered, so what part of it was you? Are you Indian or are you not? I don't know why that should occupy me so much, but I used to always wonder whether you were British or Indian or what.
No, I'm all Indian.
Yeah, that's what, and you said somewhere, yeah, so he said, then, I was really pleased because in a new edition to the same book, he writes in the introduction about Rusty, the questions that he grappled with. Who was he and where did he come from? Was he an Indian or an Anglo-Indian or an English boy born in India? I have since answered these questions for myself, convinced that I am as Indian as the dust of the plains or the grass of a mountain meadow. So, yeah. So where does this deep love of India spring from?
It's exactly there, from the ground, the soil itself.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because
from Mother Earth.
What is celebrated in contemporary literature today is this expatriate angst, and the one who has probably talked about it the most and the one who people feel for the most in India is Mr. Rushdie, because he can't come back, especially right now, it's a very topical thing. Have you never felt that angst of being the outsider or the foreigner? And have you felt like
No, not really. Maybe as a youngster occasionally, but the older I've grown, I think the more attached and the more I identify myself with the land.
Okay.
And I've found myself even accepted more as I've grown older.
Okay.
So I think it's just been a blending process.
Yeah, okay. So there's a story that you write where you talk about, it's called Escape from Java. I don't know how many of you have read it, but it talks about a young boy who escaped with his dad from Jakarta. Jakarta was being bombed by the Japanese at the end of the Second World War, and he had to evacuate. He took like this doddering old seaplane with his dad and a couple of other people, and the seaplane crashed into the ocean, into the, what was that, Bay of Bengal perhaps, or off the Burmese coast somewhere.
My geography is so bad, I can't remember if it was the Bay of Bengal or the Arabian Sea.
No. It had to be the Bay of Bengal. You were coming from Indonesia. So, yeah, the Bay of Bengal headed for Bombay, and then, they were in an inflatable dinghy. Somebody died in the plane when it crashed, and there was a dinghy and surrounded by sharks. 3 days spent eating rations of little biscuits and chocolate, whatever was there, and when all hope was almost being given up and everybody was sunburned, there was a Burmese fishing boat that picked them up, and he talks about how the very next week he was heading to Simla and his dad had joined the RAF. Now, in other books, he has talked about his dad being in the RAF and about him going to boarding school. So I read it only recently, and I said, my God, for all his unhurried, quiet kind of writing, Mr. Bond has had a very adventurous early childhood. So did that happen?
I'm a great liar. Writers have to be if they're going to write stories. So I have to confess I made it all up. None of that happened. But I researched it well, and something like it had happened to others, to someone else. And that's why I write ghost stories too, because I never really met a ghost, but someone asked me if I believed in ghosts, and I said, no, I don't believe in them, but I keep seeing them.
Yeah, are you sure you haven't seen a ghost? Because you've written so many ghost stories and most recently edited the Penguin anthology of ghost stories.
Well, kids like ghost stories, and that's a sort of fascination about there's a sort of safe fear. You're scared, but you know at the back of your head that it's all right. Nothing really happening.
Would you like to tell us one of your ghost stories?
What ghost story? Gosh, now you mean well, there is this. Probably the nearest I've come to a real ghost is sometimes late at night I'm a restless sleeper and my rezai or blanket slips off the bed, and I'm half asleep, half awake, and I'm conscious of someone picking it up and putting it back on me and tucking me in. And I put on the light and there's nobody there. So it's a very motherly sort of caring ghost.
Okay.
Yes, so my ghosts are not scary or frightening. They're
But he does write the most lovely ghost stories. There are all these lovely, sweet ghosts in them. And for all his, lovely stories about nature and everything, when he writes a ghost story, it can chill you, actually, if you read any of his ghost stories. So I actually don't believe him that he hasn't actually encountered ghosts. The other thing now, let's come to, more in keeping with the theme of today. You write about progress. I just want to read out a little bit.
There's that figure standing just behind her, if you can notice. There's a spooky figure.
Yeah. So this is from a story called Death of the Trees. It's not a story, it's just a little essay. The peace and quiet of the Maplewood hillside disappeared forever one winter. The powers that be decided to build another new road into the mountains, and the PWD saw fit to take it right past the cottage, about 6 feet from the large window which had overlooked the forest. Maplewood is a cottage in which Mr. Bond lived. The walnut was one of the first to go, a tree that I had lived with for over 10 years, watching it grow just as I had watched Prem's little son Rakesh grow up. Another tree I'll miss is the young deodar, the only one growing in this stretch of the woods. 20 oaks have been felled, just in this small stretch near the cottage. By the time this bypass reaches Jabarkhet, about 6 miles from here, over 1,000 oaks will have been slaughtered, besides many other fine trees, maples, deodars, pines, most of them unnecessarily, as they grew some 50 to 60 yards from the roadside. Rakesh calls the maples the butterfly trees because when the winged seeds fall, they flutter like butterflies in the breeze. No maples now, no bright red leaves to flame against the sky, no birds. But there are other things to look forward to. Trucks thundering past in the night, perhaps a tea and pakoda shop around the corner, the grinding of gears, the music of motor horns. Will the whistling thrush be heard above them? Somehow, I don't think we shall wait for the tea shop to arrive. There must be some other quiet corner, possibly on the next mountain, where new roads have yet to come into being. No doubt this is a negative attitude, and if I had any sense, I'd open my own tea shop. To retreat is to be a loser, but the trees are losers too, and when they fall, they do so with a certain dignity. Never mind. Men come and go, the mountains remain. So, yeah.
Well read. You read that very nicely, but listening to it, I must say I'm a very boring writer. You wouldn't want to write like that.
No, did you hear all the ahs at the end of that passage when I finished reading it? Everyone went. It touches a very deep chord in people, your kind of writing. But what is your take on progress? You seem to be very philosophical in this, saying, I'll just move to another mountain, I won't rant and
the trouble is I moved to another mountain, and the same thing happened there. Another road came under the window with more trucks.
Yeah.
So you can't run away from it, really.
But what do you, if it was an ideal world, how would you like progress to happen?
Well, in an organized way, with times change, towns grow bigger, our population keeps expanding. We need room for people, but we also need room for nature, because that's what gives us a certain, you might say, both a physical and a spiritual satisfaction and enjoyment, because there's so much we gain from it. And you realize that only when you miss it, when you don't have it. Because I think you could be living in a beautiful forest and not appreciate it, but it's only when it's gone that you'll miss it, that you'll know what you really love. So I think we need a balance in everything.
Yeah. You say somewhere that the world may be in political and financial turmoil, but that doesn't mean that ants should not go about their business, right? And if in your personal life, you could probably extend that to say the world may be on Facebook, the world and his aunt may be on Facebook, but that doesn't mean that I should get a Gmail account. Is that true? Is that your relationship with technology?
That's right, yes. I mean, don't force anything upon anyone.
Yeah.
You let it.
And in your own personal life, what is your relationship with technology?
I'm totally illiterate, technologically illiterate. I still have difficulty with the telephone. And I'm very impractical anyway, so it's not that I'm against technology, it's just that I'm hopeless at it, helpless at it. I even get on the wrong train at times. Once I got on the night train to Delhi and I woke up in Lucknow the next morning. Fortunately, the station master was an old friend and he sent me back to Dehradun.
Okay. Now, in one of your books, the introduction, you say gentle reader. He starts by addressing all of us readers as gentle readers. And he says, I use the old-fashioned term because I don't think anyone who's reading my books must be a gentle sort of person. Otherwise they wouldn't care for my books, is what he says. And, but with all the rushing about that people do these days, are you surprised that there's still such a huge market for your kind of book? Perhaps bigger than there ever was for your kind of...
I'm very fortunate in that respect. There are more readers today, but there are more writers, and there are so many young people who want to write.
But is that all? I mean, there are enough books full of action and adventure also. Why do people still choose your books?
I've been writing 50, 60 years, and up to, say, 20 years back, my books were not particularly popular. I'll tell you a little incident. I remember, like most writers, you like to go into a bookshop and see your book on display. I went into a small bookshop and I was looking around everywhere for a little book of my stories. And finally I found it right tucked underneath a pile of bestsellers, Harold Robbins and Khushwant Singh and all. So I looked around, nobody was looking. I thought the bookseller wasn't looking, I thought. So I pulled it out from underneath the pile and put it on top. And the owner of the shop, he saw me. So he came across, he didn't know I was the author. He came across, he picked up the book, he looked it up, looked at it, he said, "Ye nahi chalta," and he put it back underneath the pile. So just to teach him a lesson, I bought the book myself. So sometimes you have to wait a long time for a little success.
You also say somewhere that, that this is the problem with if writers have said or done anything, particularly someone who's been writing for such a long time, it's the habit of critics and other people to pick out some particular quote out of context and then impale you on it, right? So anyway, this is from a recent thing, so I think you probably actually meant it. So in our imperfect world, there is far too much talk and not enough thought. The TV channels are awash with TV gurus telling us how to live, and they do so at great length. This verbal diarrhea is infectious and appears to affect news persons and TV anchors who are prone to lecturing and bullying the guests on their shows. Yeah? Is there anyone here who does not agree with this statement? Yeah. But I wanted to ask you what I am often asked as a children's writer. Does television really hamper the growth of children's imaginations? And is there anything redeeming about the medium at all?
We used to think of films as doing that at one time, but looking looking back on my own school days, when there was no television, there was no internet, or none of the things we blame today for the maybe the absence of the reading habit. But even then, there were just 2 or 3. I'd say out of a class of 35, there were 2 or 3 of us who read books, who were fond of books, and the rest might have read comics, or once a month went to the pictures. So there was nothing you could blame for it. So I always think reading was always a minority pastime. It still is, but that minority today has grown. So that small percentage, because of there's so much more education now, more schools, that small percentage of readers, in terms of numbers, is much bigger. Which is why there are more writers, there are more publishers. Every week there's a new publisher, books keep coming out. Somebody must be buying them.
And Apple just
and
launched
presumably reading them.
Apple just launched their self-publishing app. So
Yes, that too, right.
so everybody is a writer these days.
Yeah, and why not?
Yeah, and the other thing I think that I absolutely agree with you. I say exactly the same thing about whether television has hampered children's imaginations. And I think I always say that, is imagination so powerless a thing that something like television can kill it? I mean, that's impossible.
No, I think television is helpful in acquainting you with life in other countries too, and the world in general. So someone, say, staying in a village in the interior of Uttar Pradesh or Madhya Pradesh, but with a television set, some kid at least knows what's happening in the rest of the world, which otherwise he would not have known.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so you are known primarily as a children's writer, even though you write with equal felicity for both children and adults.
Sometimes for adults and sometimes for myself.
Yeah. No, but your children's writing, is what you're really known for, and
it's probably what I enjoy the most.
What you enjoy the most as well. What is different about writing for children from writing for adults?
Not a great deal of difference. Writing for children or young readers, though, you have to catch the interest of the reader right on page 1, straight away, because otherwise your book or story is going to be dumped in the waste paper basket. Whereas an adult will be a little more patient and read 2 or 3 chapters of your book before dumping it in the waste paper basket. And so I think it's a more, the young audience is a more demanding one.
Yes.
You have to tell a good story, you have to have interesting characters, and so it's quite a challenge.
And you also say somewhere that, you're able to get into the mind of a child.
Yes.
And is that a prerogative for a good children's writer?
It probably helps, because if you look at the lives of famous authors who wrote for children, they probably had either very lonely childhoods or traumatic childhoods or maybe they were lost one parent or someone. And it does, I think, maybe give you a greater sensitivity than in dealing with childhood when you write about it, or with other children.
Yeah. And you
I think of Dickens growing up without any proper parentage, or so many others too.
So tell us a little bit about your relationship with your father. I think that's a very important.
It was a close relationship, and I lost him when I was only 10. But I think before that he had given me a love for books, for nature, for many of the good things in life. And
so as a parent, is there some bit of advice that you would like to give us parents in the auditorium?
To give parents? Gosh, that's very difficult.
No, just as what you got from your dad, what was that makes you remember him?
Yes, I think you must maybe share your own life with your children and not be remote from them. And also try to understand their thinking, which is going, in this day and age, is going to be a bit different. And their interests will be different from parents. And so it's got to be sort of a meeting of minds. And I think the more time spent together
Yeah.
is good.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
talking like an old grandfather and never had any children. I don't know what. Though I have a large adopted family.
Yeah, you do. Okay, so now before you start thinking that he's this like really serious kind of person, I want to ask him a question. I don't know how many of you knew this. We know this. We talked about Sat Khoon Maaf, but do you know Mr. Bond has now added another bullet point to his already glittering resume. He can now list himself as Bollywood actor. He actually he actually played a cameo role in Sat Khoon Maaf, and I'd like him to share the experience with us.
Well, I did this 2-minute role, but since then nobody's offered me any more roles. There's no great demand for my services.
But tell us what you were saying.
Well, I was supposed to give Priyanka Chopra a sort of fatherly kiss on the cheek in this particular scene, which I did so eagerly and so clumsy the first time that I knocked her spectacles off. She had the glasses on. So the director said, do it again, you know. So she was very sporting. Like we did it twice, 3 times. This went on. After the 10th take, the director said, Mr. Bond, you're doing this on purpose. So anyway, it was, no, that's why I'm saying nobody wants me to, again in movies.
Yeah, and all of us know, the readers amongst us here, know that the Jaipur Lit Fest is on right now. It's where all the authors have disappeared. And of course, Mr. Bond had an invitation to go there. I mean, he was asked to be one of the delegates, one of the participating authors, in fact. But he actually turned it down to be here because he thought it was more important to be here at the Wipro Earthian Awards, where he found a resonance here rather than there. And not only did he just agree to come here, he wrote a special poem just for all the people who are here. So I'd ask him to read it out.
Oh, yes, right, okay. Do you want me to read it?
Of course I want you to read it.
Yeah, I keep poems in my pocket, not credit cards. I need my reading glasses.
And of course, it's all written in beautiful longhand. He doesn't even use a typewriter anymore, I'm told.
I used to, but I get a stiff neck now if I type for too long. I'll use my reading glasses. The last time, when I was coming, I clipped the wrong ones. When I was coming into Delhi by car, and the traffic was so bad that the taxi driver, he braked suddenly, and my specs, they flew off my nose, and they landed on the driver's nose. And he's still wearing them, he wouldn't give them back to me. So I'm using a very old pair. So this is all about being a nature lover, but as I was telling you, nature doesn't always reciprocate. You might love the natural world, it doesn't necessarily love you. It's called hip-hop nature boy. Don't ask me to do hip-hop, no, but I'll read the poem. When I was 7 and climbing trees, I stepped into a hive of bees. Badly stung and mad with pain, I danced the hip-hop in the rain. Hip-hop, I'm a nature boy, Mother Nature's pride and joy. When I was 12, still climbing trees, I fell instead and landed on my head. Feeling lighter, I thought I might become a writer. Hip-hop, dancing in the rain, a nature writer I became. With nature being my natural bent, at 20, I took out my tent and spent the night beside a nadi, wearing only vest and chaddi. At crack of dawn, I woke to find a crocodile was close behind and smiling broadly. In times of crisis at my best, I did not trouble to get dressed, but fled towards the Gulf of Kutch with fond salams to Magarmach. Mother Nature once again found me dancing on the plain, Nanga Panga in the rain. Growing older, even bolder, took a winding mountain trail, up a hill and down a dale, all to see a mountain quail. The quail was extinct, long expired. I was limping, very tired. Thought I saw a comfy cot in a corner of a hut. Feeling grateful, I sank down upon a blanket soft as down. Blanket rose up all at once, gave a shudder, then a pounce. Stumbling in the darkness there, I disturbed a big brown bear. I did not stop to say goodnight, but fled into the open night, hip-hop in the rain, dancing to that old refrain. Growing old, I thought it safer, in my tryst with Mother Nature, to grow flowers, roses, dahlias, poppies, sweet peas, rare azaleas, candy tuft, and tiny tansies, violets sweet and naughty pansies. A lovely garden I'd constructed. Birds and bees were soon inducted. Bees? Did I say bees? They were buzzing all around me, angry, diving down upon me. For where their hive had been suspended, by accident it lay upended. Dear reader, if you must in nature put your trust, stay away from swarms of bees and strange crocs lurking under trees. Or else, like me, you will dance with pain while doing the hip-hop in the rain. Thank you. Thank you.
Everybody, Ruskin Bond.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Now we'll take questions from the audience.
Yeah?
Mr. Bond, we'll take a few questions
certainly.
from the audience. Yeah.
Yes.
Anyone?
Sir,
Yeah.
Where are
can
you?
hear you. Here.
There, actually, right.
sir, who inspired you when you started writing?
Who inspired me when I started writing? Well, other writers to begin with, because I was a great reader, fond of reading, and so by the time I'd finished school, I was sort of confident that I would like to be a writer, and wanted to emulate my own favorites then. So I think other writers do influence you a great deal. And perhaps there were also one or two teachers who encouraged me, because at school I was pretty good at writing essays and that sort of thing.
Sir, you like reading or writing, if you had to prefer?
I was a real bookworm. I used to love reading. I read more perhaps when I was in my teens and in my 20s than I do now, because now with writing and other work connected with it, the time for reading is sort of limited to about half an hour or an hour a day. When I was young, I'd sometimes stay up all night with a book if I enjoyed it.
Okay, this is a strange question, but what's your favorite book?
My favorite book, gosh, it's hard to say. We all have so many favorites and they change over the years. One of my favorites was Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. And read it when I was 12, and it kept me up all night. It really gripped me. It was so intense and passionate. And oddly enough, about a month back, I came across a copy again, and I thought, let's see if I still enjoy it. And I began reading it. And once again, I was up all night till 2 in the morning. So that was a test, I think, of a great book, that it could still, after so many years, hold your attention.
Sir, sir, can I please have an autograph? That is the only question I have.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
That I dislike? No, I can't say I dislike any authors, because if I'm not enjoying the book, I won't go any further. So there are books, we all have our likes and dislikes. So there's some books we enjoy more than others, and if I'm not enjoying a book, I won't finish it. I won't carry on with it. Come bring your book. You have one, right? Thank you. What's your name?
Hello, sir. This is Raghava here. When I was 12, I read
Wait.
Yeah?
Let him finish.
H-A-double-N? And,
Yeah, later,
okay,
guys.
yeah.
Not now. Let the question session finish and then.
When I was 12, I read a story about the girl on the train where...
One sec, he's not.
Yes, the girl on the train is
now.
also known as the eyes have it.
There,
Or
that's
the eyes
him.
have not.
Yeah, the eyes have it. And I was 12, and soon next year, doctors tell that I'll be blind. And unfortunately, I don't know, I'm blind right now. And actually, I want to know, how did you experience it? Really, the blind people experience it and we imagine it. And you end the story like the boy, the person on the train, he thinks if the girl has tied her hair or she left it loose. And whenever I meet someone on my travels, I said, oh, is her hair tied? Or, and fortunately, like last year, I met a girl really on the a flight journey like that. And when she says, I don't know that you're blind. So, did you spend any time with the blind people or something like that to experience this?
A little. Yes, I tried. This was one of my first short stories. I wrote it when I was about 21, long time ago. And I tried to, in this story, imagine what it would be like for a blind person in a train, trying to find out what someone else looked like, who sounded very attractive and interesting. And when I wrote this, in the story, it's only at the end that he, the protagonist, discovers that the girl he's trying to find out about, he discovers that she is also blind. Someone tells him. And this conclusion or end only came to me actually when I came to the end of writing the story. So in a way, it was as much of a surprise to me as it is to the reader, because I hadn't envisioned that ending to it. So perhaps that's why this story has been quite successful and has, over the years, been reprinted again and again, because it's quite...
You need to make your mind up that you'll be blind.
I did meet blind people when I was young, because in Dehradun, close by, we had the...
Actually, I read the story and I got a lot of motivation. Like I said, if he can imagine, I can imagine too.
Thank you.
Hello, sir. Sir, here.
Which side?
Yes.
Sir, who is your favorite writer?
Gosh. Again, it's hard to say. The favorites change over the years. So the many favorites, starting with classical writers like Dickens and the Brontes, and then Tagore I enjoyed, R. K. Narayan, and P.J. Wodehouse, crime thrillers, vampire writers, all sorts of writers. I read everything that comes my way. I like biography too.
Yeah.
Sir, excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
As an Indian culture, the husbands are treated like a god.
Here,
Sir, here,
sorry.
sir.
She's
This
here.
side.
Where are you? I don't see too well either, actually.
Sir, in India, the husbands are treated like god. And how you got the idea of writing 7 husbands? Where Saat Khun Maaf, that's what we have seen.
Yes, you see, I took that legend of the, Bluebeard, who had killed 7 wives, and he disposed of them in various ways to get their money or their property. So I turned it around instead. So I thought let me have a woman who does the same thing to her 7 husbands. And they were mostly fortune hunters. And this was actually based on a real person who lived outside, between a Dutch lady who lived up in, what's that little settlement up the Hooghly from Calcutta, Chinsura. And her grave is there, and the people around that area, it's a lonely grave in a big estate, say that she was known as the 7 times married lady, because she'd actually had gone through 7 husbands who had died in various mysterious ways, and she'd got away with it. So
I read in an interview somewhere that when you had to rewrite Susanna's 7 husbands, it used to be a short story, and he rewrote it as a novel.
For Vishal Bhardwaj.
And then you had to think of creative Indian ways of getting rid of people.
Yes. Yes, right.
Yeah. Like what example?
So if you want to know how to get rid of a husband or a wife, you can consult me. I won't charge too much.
I think he wants to
Excuse
answer
me,
it.
sir?
Yeah, there, yeah. Can
Yeah,
Yeah, sir, I have this question. When cinema directors interpret your books, do they enhance or diminish your visions? And what is your reaction to both, sir?
Now that's a very interesting question. Yes, sometimes writers might be disappointed in the way their story or book is presented, but you see, it's a different medium. So maybe a story is chosen because it has dramatic value, and the characters are interesting. But in the process of actually making a film, you do have to make changes because it's entirely a visual medium, and so sometimes maybe plot might be changed or characters changed. So I think a writer must expect that and not be too rigid on that matter. So, and I was lucky in that sense, in that I had such a good director, firstly in Shyam Benegal, who made Junoon, and then in Vishal Bhardwaj, who made Blue Umbrella, and Saat Khoon Maaf. And I think also because, in a way, I grew up a lot on films. I used to go to the movies a lot as a boy. And even, I think, they might have even influenced me to some extent, in that my stories are often very visual. I sort of, when I write a story, a short story, I'll see it happen in my head first. I'm visualizing it almost like a film. And then I put it down in words and tell the story.
Last two
Good
more
evening,
questions.
sir.
Just two more questions. Yeah.
So, if you will get a chance to recreate the world, what would be the first thing you will create or make? I just want to hear from you, as all we have read so many nature imaginative poems and all. So I want to hear from you, what would be the first thing you will make?
If the first thing I would make
If you could redesign the world.
if I could redesign the world, well, you can't play God, you know. I wouldn't even attempt to redesign anything or anyone, but well, I'd just like to see a child grow up. Let there be more children.
Okay, last question.
Sir, good evening, sir.
Yeah.
Sir.
One second.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
If you were asked to rate your works, which would stand in the first place, sir, according to you?
If I had to
Which
rate
of
my
your
own
work?
work. Well,
Yes, sir, your work.
I was at a school in Delhi a couple of years back, and a teacher asked a little girl who was about 10. She said, "What do you think of Mr. Bond's work or stories? How do you rate him as a writer?" So she thought about it long and hard, and she looked at me and said, "Sir, you're not a bad writer." So I think I'll go for that. I'll accept it.
Thank you
Not a
so
bad
much.
writer.
I'm afraid we'll have to end the session because I think the music is about to start
Okay.
now. So thank you so much. Such
Ladies
a
and gentlemen, if you could all please put your hands together for the one and only Mr. Ruskin Bond, the legend. So once again, having said that, I'd like to request Mr. Anurag to please come up on stage and present Mr. Ruskin Bond with a small token of our appreciation. Thank you, sir. It has been indeed a delight, an incredible privilege, a dream come true for every single person in this hall.
That's very nice.
Thank you for gracing this occasion. We'd also like to present Rupa Pai with a small token of our appreciation as well.
Where should I be? Yeah, fine.
I'd like to request Mr. Anurag to please present Rupa Pai with a small token of our appreciation. Thank you, Rupa, so much indeed.